Hey everyone, how's it going? This week's video, a little different. Here I am out on a walk on a beautiful Sunday fall afternoon in New Hampshire. It's perfect temperature right now, probably like high 60s. Sun's out. Yeah, just really enjoying this fall weather while we have it here in New Hampshire before it gets too cold. But I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple questions related to knowing exactly what to eat that came up in my group coaching program this past week on our Zoom call. For those of you who don't know, I run a quarterly group coaching program and happens every quarter. Unfortunately, the one for the fall just closed down. So you have to wait for the one for the winter if you're interested in that. But I'll be sure to let you know. And if you want to know when it's open, please subscribe to the newsletter. Best way to find out is on the newsletter. But anyways, yeah, when I was on our call, there's kind of two separate questions, but they actually relate to each other. And one of the participants had asked what my thought on bread was. And then the other one was, and one of the lessons that in the program, I was talking about what to drink. And I had mentioned that I put stevia in my coffee. And she was wondering if the type of stevia that she was using was okay because it had xylitol in it. And so I was noodling on these questions. They're two heavy hitting questions, frankly. The first one on if bread's okay is a very nuanced question. Right? It really depends on the person, the type of bread, how often they're eating it, that type of stuff. And the question on stevia is really, again, how much stevia are you actually using, or how do you feel when you have the stevia, that type of stuff. And in general, I was thinking more about my answers, and I realized that they're pretty much overarching the same, said the same thing on both answers. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how we're trying to navigate food environments, and you hear that certain foods are okay or certain foods are not okay. And then you have your desire to eat these foods, the cultural norms, that type of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that goes into deciding if a food is all right or for you to eat or not, or if it serves you for your goals, that type of stuff. So I want to provide a little bit of a framework for deciding that food. First off, I think an easy way to eliminate a vast majority of foods and decide whether they should be in your diet or not is to ask, is the food natural or not? Right? Is it a man-made processed food, or is it a whole food, or comes from some type of whole food? And if it comes from some type of whole food, how processed is a version of that whole food that you're eating? Right? For example, juice comes from a whole food. It's also highly processed, which means it changes your body's response, right? Drinking apple juice is a lot different than eating an apple, for example, right? So that's what I'm referring to there. So if it's a natural food in its whole food form, very minimally processed, then that seems like good food. But you also need to judge your body's response to that food. Just because it's a whole food doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. We can eat a peanut and it can be very deadly for some people, for example, right? That's an extreme case, but you get what I'm saying. Your body's reaction to that whole food is going to depend whether it's good or not for you. Let's say it's not really a whole food, more of a processed food like a bread or um, something like a sweetener of some kind, um, whether that sweetener is quote unquote natural or um, it comes from a plant or it's artificially made. Either way, how do you decide with those foods, right? Let's use the bread as an example because that was on top of my mind and that was a direct question I was asked. But how often are you having this bread, right? And why are you having it, right? I think there's just like anything, there's a real spectrum when it comes to bread, right? We have a handmade, freshly baked sourdough bread or something like an Ezekiel bread, which is more grainy. If you were to leave it out on the counter, it would probably go bad within 2 days versus something like a very highly processed white bread, like a Wonder Bread or something like that. Those are they're both breads, but they're two very different types of bread, right? And I think if on the spectrum of bread, something that's a freshly baked, fermented sourdough type of bread or Ezekiel bread, something you went to the farmer's market and even if it's just like a regular white bread, right? It's something you went to the farmer's market and someone baked that day. Again, it's going to go bad. It's not full of preservatives. It's going to go bad quite quickly if you don't eat it. I think that would be a better choice than something like a Wonder Bread, for example. And okay, you pick like a very high quality bread. And then how often are you having that bread? You're having just one slice every morning with breakfast with some, maybe make an avocado toast or put a little homemade jam or jelly on there from some fresh blueberries or that you picked, or you like to make just some grass-fed butter on it, right? The other example is we go out to a restaurant and there's freshly baked bread that gets put on a table, and you might want to have a slice here and there when you go out to a nice restaurant with your significant other on date night. I'm sorry for the truck that's about to go by here in a second. If you're coming up behind me, pause. Here we go. So this is another scenario where that bread that you get at the restaurant probably isn't some fresh baked. Maybe it doesn't depend on where you are, but fresh baked artisan bread, for example, it might just be a piece of regular bread here and there. Or you want to have some special dinner rolls on Thanksgiving, a holiday, or something like that. So there's certain situations where I think people enjoy a slice of bread. And ultimately, I think, as using it as an example, if you're going to have a slice of bread, even if it's daily, if you just have one slice because you enjoy it and you have no side effects from it, how can I say it's terrible for you? Right? Are you destroying your health from it? Probably not. If you're going to have a piece of bread daily, I'd probably err on the side of trying to get the most high quality bread that you possibly can, because it is something that's in your diet pretty frequently. Whereas if you just have a slice when you go out to dinner a few times a year on special occasions, am I going to stress about the quality of that bread? No, absolutely not. For me, there's another nuance that I want to put in here as well. Wait for the check to go by. The other thing I want to mention is, for these kind of questionable foods that maybe can sometimes be good for certain people and maybe not so good for other people. It depends. It's not like a black and white decision. There's really no ever black and white decision, but these foods that tend to be more on the edge more frequently than not, like bread, like dairy, that type of stuff. I think it is good to spend 3-4 months without it in your diet, just to make sure that you really don't have any issues with it. Right? Lots of times we love a food like dairy, like bread. It's a staple, not a staple in our diet, but it makes a frequent appearance in our diet, and we really like it a lot. So we refuse to admit that there might be something causing an issue for us, and we put some blinders on, so to say, and don't pay attention to maybe what's happening. So I think spending a period of time without it in your diet and then going back to it can reset your, first it will obviously make quite obvious if there's any kind of issue with that food. But second, also resets your palate from that diet. Like, so for example, I used to be a bread fiend. I took bread out for years and I literally have no desire to have bread very rarely, right? And now I just have it maybe occasionally when I go out to dinner sometimes with my wife, mostly, and we like to get charcuterie boards. So they'll toasted baguettes or whatever that come with the charcuterie board, I'll have a slice or two in those cases. But other than that, I really don't have any desire to have bread. And even when I do go out to eat, I might have a slice or two and then stop eating it and just eat the meats and cheeses that come with charcuterie board, because it doesn't add anything to me. It doesn't add anything enjoyment to my food. So I just tend to not eat it. But I don't think if I spent a few years without it in my diet that I would be able to have that realization that I didn't really enjoy it that much. So I do think it's useful to spend some time away from these foods like bread, like dairy, like artificial sweeteners or stuff like that. Spend a significant amount of time away from them and then come back to them and see what role they really play in your diet. And maybe they play a lot less of a role after doing something like that. So that's something else, I think. But I also think, like I said, ultimately, if you don't have too much of a problem with these foods, you don't feel any negative side effects from eating them, then if I think they make an appearance in your diet every now and then, I'm not overly concerned about it. I do think the problem tends to be is that these foods end up being staples in people's diets. And they're not just having one slice of bread, but they're having a bagel, they're having a muffin, they're having a giant sandwich for lunch, and they're having some kind of bread at dinner. And it's just like a staple. And it's not really providing a lot of nutrients. It's pushing out other nutritious foods. They do have sensitivities to them. They're really not active enough to be consuming that amount of carbohydrates, plus all the additional carbohydrates that they're going to be consuming in their day. And so it really becomes an issue for a lot of people. You have a nice piece of sourdough bread every morning and you'll feel fine from that and don't have any negative side effects from it. I guess that food's okay for you. Right. And the same goes for things like stevia with maybe a mixture of some type of artificial sweetener in there. Just what I would do in those cases, like where we have a stevia, or you like to use a stevia daily, I would actually try and find a stevia product that is just pure stevia without any kind of other artificial sweeteners mixed into it. And if you're going to use it daily at home, I would use that. If you go out and you grab a stevia packet and you don't really know exactly what else might be mixed in that stevia packet and you throw it in your coffee when you're out occasionally, I wouldn't sweat that, right? Because you're doing it once in a while. Like the other comparable here, I'll get super jump on the third rail here with seed oils. It's a very controversial topic. People say seed oils is terrible for you. They can kill you. They're pretty much the source of all disease in our diet. Other people will be like, point at the research and say, there's no research that shows anything wrong with these things. In fact, all the research shows that it's good for you. And hell, I don't really know what to believe. You hear just so many different opinions on the topic of seed oil. So I don't really know who's right or what's wrong. But my approach to this topic is seed oils, and this can be applied to a lot of different things, is when I'm cooking at home, I use natural oils. I use avocado oil, I use olive oil, I use coconut oil, I use natural fats from animals like tallow, duck fat, just whole natural oils, things that are not highly processed type of oils. If I happen to go out to a restaurant and I have some seed oils, I'm not sweating it, right? Because I go out to a restaurant once a week at most. And so I happen to have some food that has some seed oils in it. It is what it is. Maybe it's terrible for me. Maybe I'm going to die a little bit earlier. I'm not really sure. But I'm also not going to sweat the occasional exposure to a seed oil here or there. Now, if I saw someone that was using seed oils for everything that they cook in, I would perhaps suggest to them to, at least at home, move to a more natural oil. That way they're just seed oil everything. And so the same thing can be with artificial sweeteners and sweeteners in general. At home, you're using them, try to get the most purest form of that sweetener that you possibly can, whether it's a honey or a maple syrup or something like stevia or monk fruit. Try to get it so it's as natural as possible. And then when you go out and you happen to have some type of sweetener, you just pick up a packet of Sweet and Low, or you actually use real sugar when you go out or whatever to get your coffee, then don't sweat it, because the amount that you're actually consuming is very minimal overall. Right. The main thing I want to say here is this is probably not a very sexy approach, because it's not very controversial. I'm not demonizing any single thing. I'm not saying you can't have any single thing. You can't have bread. You can't have artificial sweeteners. You can't have a seed oil. I just think that we need to be conscious of what we're eating, how much of the food we're eating, and how it makes us feel, and what role it plays in our diet, right? Again, your diet you're eating a lot of fruits, you're eating a lot of vegetables, you're eating getting all your protein, and you have a slice of bread here and there. That's very different than a diet that's built upon highly processed carbohydrates, donuts, cookies, cupcakes, sandwiches, muffins, soft drinks, sugar-sweetened beverages. It's a very different diet in the context in which you're having bread. In one diet, I'm going to be trying to limit the amount of highly processed carbohydrates like breads and stuff like that. And the other one, I'm like, the amount of the role that slice of bread plays in your diet is minimal at most. And if it brings you some joy or brings you some satisfaction and you enjoy your breakfast more with that slice of bread, overall, I'm okay with it because I don't really think it's really hindering your health, um, or uh, keeping you from reaching your goals. So that's the message. I know it's very nuanced. I know it's very not straightforward, but that's honestly the way diet is. Diet is a very nuanced, complex topic. People have interactions with different foods in various different ways. And it's not just processed foods, it's whole foods too. So we can't say universally that any food is good for everyone, right? People even have weird reactions to meats, which is supposed to be the food that all humans should be able to eat. And that's just not the case. Just some people don't do really, very well with any food out there. So we have to have a very nuanced, individualized discussion. And I'm just really trying to help you be able to find that nuance for yourself, teach you how to listen to your body, provide some rough guidelines, ways to go about figuring out, hey, does this food serve me or does this food not serve me? And so that's the message I want to convey today. I hope that was useful and you find it helpful. It was a long video, but I'm going to get back to my walk here, finish it up. Hope everyone has a great week. And as always, if you're interested in other ways to help navigate this complex environment of health and wellness and diet, nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, all that fun stuff, please sign up for my newsletter. That's the best way to keep up with all the content that I put out. It's all free. It's all actionable. It's all meant to be helpful. To sign up for the newsletter, you go to rjbhealth.coach, click on the newsletter link at the top, enter your email address, be signed up. Tell me, shoot me an email, say, hi, I signed up. Always appreciate that. And if you really need some help navigating this health and wellness space, I do have some spots open for one-on-one coaching. Sign up for that or to talk to me more about that. You can go to rjbhealth.coach and click on the schedule discovery call button right on the homepage there. The first thing you'll see at the top, fill out that form, and then I'll get back to you and we can chat a little bit more about that. Or you can just shoot me a message, leave a comment below, whatever you want. Hope everyone has a good week. And